Planning a trip can be overwhelming, and sometimes you don't know where to start, especially if you're going to a destination that's maybe more off the beaten path, or maybe it's your first time going overseas, or really anywhere that is your first time. You never really know where to start. And I always just say, well, you got to start. But here are the first four things I always do when I'm looking at a new destination to visit. The first thing I do is I look at flights. And it's not just because I want to know what the flight price is to get there. I want to know the logistics of it all. Are there multiple airports where I'm landing? Is one of those airports better than another? For example, is it closer to the city I'm trying to visit? Or maybe it's a little farther away, but the budget airlines fly into that airport versus the major airport. Perfect example would be like London. I know not really off the beaten path, but Heathrow tends to be a little more expensive than, say, an airport like Luton or Stansted. Those airports are, or even Gatwick, those airports are a little farther outside the city, but they're just as easy to get into the city. It just maybe takes a little bit more time. So that's the first thing I look at with flights and yeah, the prices as well. But I also look at what is the size of the airport? How often is the airport service? If something goes wrong with my flight, are there additional flight options or are there only one flight option per day? What's in the surrounding area of the airport? If something goes wrong, I need to spend the night. Is there an airport hotel? Do I have to go back into the city? I think by now you probably get that I am a big planner. I don't say I plan for the worst, but I definitely look at something and think of all the different things that could go either right or go wrong. So flights are the first thing I look into. And also, if you're big on sticking with one airline or one alliance, that's another thing to look into with flights. Is there somewhere you could fly into where your preferred airline flies or one of their partners? And maybe that way, if you have status or you're working towards status, you can continue to do that. So first things first, I look at flights. And then after flights, I like to look at the transportation, which kind of goes hand in hand with your flights and your airport that you're choosing. Because obviously, you're going to have to leave the airport and get to your accommodation, or maybe you're transferring to a different city. Like, for example, when I went to Andorra, there aren't any airports in Andorra. So I chose to fly into Toulouse over Barcelona. And getting from Toulouse to Andorra meant I had to take the bus. So looking at the transportation and what that was going to take, there fortunately is a bus from the airport to Andorra, but that kind of digresses from the topic. Maybe another day. So transport something I look into. Going back to the London example, I know from Heathrow I have multiple options, whether that's the Heathrow Express or taking the underground into the city. I know when I went to Rome, which was new to me, they have a train that goes from the airport straight into the central station there, which is what I needed. So those were all logistics that I looked up in advance. I don't like landing somewhere and being like, okay, I'm going to figure it out, especially when it's somewhere that I don't know, that I don't speak the language. Yes, I can land and figure it out. It's a lot easier these days with phones and internet, and it's just easier than it used to be. But transportation is my second thing I look into just to make sure that one, it's logistically possible, and two, it's possible in a way that I'm comfortable with. So that's definitely my second one. My third one I like to look into is your accommodations. And everybody likes to stay in different places. Some people are still okay being in a hostel environment. Some people love their hotels, and then there's Airbnbs. There's just a ton of options these days for places to stay. And it's great because there's something for everyone. Hi, my little helper. So it's great because there's something for everyone, but it's also something that I like to look into because maybe you are the person that likes to stay in more of an all-inclusive luxury environment. Well, Okay, that's awesome. And that's not always going to be available everywhere you go. So, looking to make sure that there's accommodations that suit your needs, then it's something that you like is the next thing I look into. A lot of times I just try to travel on a budget. So I'm looking at hostels. Can I get a private room? What's the cost comparison between staying at a hostel, either in a shared room or a private room versus staying in maybe just a single windowless room in a hotel, or maybe there is a last minute deal on a Airbnb apartment or studio. I've had that happen before where it was actually cheaper for me to stay in an Airbnb as a last minute deal versus staying in a hotel. And so it's just something that I like to look into next to make sure that wherever I'm going, there's options and also to see how those options are laid out. Are they close to transport? Are they close to the airport? Are they close to the city center? Are they close to attractions that I'd like to go to? Just a ton of considerations there, but it just helps to continue to build um, your trip and the outline of what that's looking going to look like before you choose to book. And so the fourth thing and the last thing that I like to look into are blogs. Yes, blogs are not dead in the world of AI. I'll actually even extend this to social media, but I definitely start with blogs. I appreciate being able to read the recommendations from people who have been there, done that. There is no replacement for the knowledge people have from being the boots on the ground in a location. You can look at things on maps, for example, and think, wow, that's really spread out, or that looks like a good area. And then you can read somebody's blog and find out that maybe the opposite is true, or maybe things are closer than you thought they were, or maybe it's worth skipping. Maybe they figured out something with transportation that you wouldn't otherwise know. And so I just love blogs. I really can't sing their praises enough. There's so much information and knowledge to be gained from doing a little bit of research, finding a trustworthy traveler who has written down their experience and quite likely has a similar experience to the one you're looking for, and just reading what they have to say. It's saved me so many times. It's boosted my confidence so many times. They're absolutely invaluable. I think they're a little bit overlooked in the age of AI and reviews and all that comes with our modern technology. But again, there really is nothing that can replace the boots on the ground experience that you get from someone who has been there, done that, wrote the blog about it, and maybe even made the t-shirt as some other merchandise. So those are my four things that I start to look at when I begin deciding on whether or not I'm going to go ahead and book a trip. So again, that is looking at flights, transportation, accommodations, and blogs. It's served me well over the last, well, I've been traveling internationally for 20 years, overseas internationally for 20 years, but I would say in the past 10 years, those four things have served me well. They very rarely led me astray. Things happen, but because I started with this foundation, I had a successful trip. I've had all successful trips at the end of the day, and this is a huge reason why. So, yeah, I don't know have more on that topic at the moment, but go ahead and speaking of blogs, feel free to check out my blog. I'll link it below. Join the newsletter. Come and hang out for a little bit in my corner of the internet. I'm excited to have you here and looking forward to where it all goes. Bye.